So, I watched Silent Sea last night. I think it's an 8 episode, sort of one season miniseries. It's Korean, it's sort of space horror, sort of sci fi horror genre. And it was actually pretty stunning. Certainly met the horror quota. There was some very yikes bits in it. It gets into the ethics of cloning. One of my favourite sci fi genres as well, exotic chemistry, which I love. I fucking love that. I love the idea that we have just scratched the surface of chemistry, because every time I hear that notion that we have now discovered all the elements and the entire universe is made only out of those elements that we have discovered, I get a little annoyed, because I don't think that's remotely possible. And even the elements that we do have, I mean, there are, I think I read about it once. There are like 65 different states that water can be in, 65 different sort of types of water, and some of them literally would burn right through your skin. And it's just literally, chemically, it's just water, but it's a different type of water. So, no, I look forward to us mapping all that crazy shit out. It has a lot of tension between the characters, inter-character tension, which is always good. And Korean movies tend to do that very well. Anyway, they do that very, very well. There's a certain sort of rigid hierarchical nature to, I mean, most countries, but it's quite prominent in parts of Korea, and Korean movies quite often tie that in to their inter-character drama in quite a fun way. So something that might, like, strike the West as deeply sexist or something is more about hierarchical structure, which is quite cool. There's a lot of people die. I'm going to spoil how, but yeah, a lot of people die in some quite strange ways. It's also got a lot about ethics. It makes you think more and more as the series goes on. You catch yourself philosophically sort of debating what would be morally correct for the characters to do next. And in my opinion, it's quite a dark ending. It was played as a light ending, but it is quite dark, especially for one character in particular. Nothing good is going to happen to them after the movie at all. I really liked it. It kind of pulled me into its world for the night in a really fun way, actually. Because it's got the horror element, it's definitely got that. It's got, like, kind of almost, action elements. It's got deep philosophical sort of questions being asked. It's got the really cool sci-fi stuff. One thing that did make me giggle, and I view it not as them being bad at something, just as something that entertained me, is how they walked when they were on the moon. Because did I forget that part? No, it's all set on the moon, on a lunar base, like 5 years after some epic disaster has gone down there. There's government corruption, definitely. It's also a really interesting look at a dystopian human future back on Earth, because it's a future in which water is so rare that everyone has a sort of card, and the card is graded. It has letter gradings, so A would be the highest of that, but then above that it seems to have other gradings, one of which is gold, which is the highest of the highest grade that you can have. And the height of that grading determines how much water you're allowed to have. And you go along to these really dystopian water banks and flash your card and, with almost like a petrol style pump, just kind of pick up your water for the day. And there was one point in the movie where clearly something bad had gone wrong in the water plant, and it all burst through the wall to where the people were queuing up. And everyone were, obviously, all the people were rushing to go and grab some of this essentially free water. There were army soldiers that you could literally hear them, like, shouting out, "Don't move, we'll shoot!" And you knew that they were, just about to gun down a load of innocent people who were just trying to get a bit of water. It is the vibe of the scene. You don't actually see, any massacre of that nature, but there's a certain level of sort of ominous undertones, and it's a really short scene, but for some reason that scene really did sort of stick with me quite a lot. And there's loads of protests as well going down on Earth, saying they want the water distributed evenly amongst the people rather than this tiered system where, essentially the rich get all the water and the poor people just have to make do with very little at all. Any water outside of these banks is deeply, deeply dirty. Like, people are dying in large quantities from being forced to drink dirty water. This was never mentioned in the film, but I got the sense that there might have been an underclass, something maybe under level Z, where you weren't given any water at all. Maybe prisoners, ex-cons, the quote-unquote undesirables in society. You know, every society has undesirables. Every nation has a subclass, an underclass, who are treated just inhumanely. I did get that sense. I very much did. So there's all these really dark undertones. It sort of sets you up to want this mission to succeed, obviously, because you want them to do whatever is necessary to chill Earth the F out. Personally, I don't even believe if they had completed all the mission completely fine, no hitches, that it would have sorted anything out. Because the problem on Earth it was water. It obviously was the lack of water. Like, they had no oceans. But it was also just corruption. Just absolute, rampant, power-based, control-based, vile corruption at its most basic level. And ticking up resources doesn't normally just kill corruption. You know, if you've got a corrupt boss, getting more profit into the company does not make that person less corrupt. In most cases, it makes them more corrupt because it gives them more power and more opportunity to take more. So they had a solution that would basically give back Earth its water, but that solution was going to be owned by this Korean government, because it was all set in Korea. Like, the human scenes were set in physical Korea, and then the whole team was Korean up on the moon. Except for a couple of, like, bodies they found, and a couple of, God, how to say this without giving away too much of the story. A couple of characters who seem to be from, I can't remember the name of it, like RXD? This international group of spacefaring peoples. So they weren't tied to any one nation, and they had a bit of a reputation for going around and breaking into certain nations' space bases, places like that, and basically stealing the results or stealing whatever they had over there, whatever they were developing. And they find, the first body they find on the moon is one of these people. And they're quite shocked about it at first, because they're like, well, we don't recognise him. This is our base. What the hell is some random person doing here? But, they figure out pretty quickly that it's going to be one of these sort of, I want to call them almost international space pirates, because they seem to be a group comprised of people coming from all kinds of different nations to achieve a common goal. They also mentioned, other sort of rival space firms from other nations before they settled on that decision. There's spycraft, there's corruption, there's unfamiliar chemistry, general horror themes. They're in a really creepy, abandoned base. It's not a fun place to be. There's, what would I call it, like suspense horror? There are things they have to do. The base is not working properly. I want to state that very clearly. Like, the base is in utter disarray. They still have to do quite a lot of these things whilst they're there. They're essentially, most of them are from the Korean military, it seems, with a few other people, like there's a doctor and an astrobiologist, but the vast majority of them are Korean soldiers under the guidance of the captain of the ship that brought them there, who also seems to be, the commanding officer in a military sense as well. So he's the one making most, if not all, of the decisions, at least at the start of the movie. They sort of have to lean on the doctor and the scientist more and more as the movie progresses, as they find more weird shit, so let's just put it like that. But these army soldiers still have loads and loads of tasks to complete, and none of the safety features or standard safety practices are working properly. So there's a lot of things where they have to do things where it looks like you're more likely to die than anything else if you attempt to do it. So I don't really know what the definition of that is, like action horror, suspense horror, sort of dangerous stunts, but that kind of thing, and that's quite entertaining. You gotta love that. Gotta love that, because most of those dangerous stunts play into pretty ancient fears anyway. You know, fear of heights, fear of the dark, and fear of stepping into unknown places where you are, by your nature, not welcome. I'm gonna put it like that, because this movie made me think a lot. It made me theorize a lot about why it was unsettling, because it got really into tapping into as many different types of nope, not cool, as possible. And I really like that it did that. I really like that it took the time to do that, man. So it's on Netflix, so it's free. It's got 8 episodes, available to stream now, at least in the UK. I don't, know about everywhere else, but I assume so. It's Korean, so if it made it all the way to the UK, it would have made it everywhere else, essentially. And it's called The Silent Sea. It does have subtitles, but you get used to that in about 30 seconds. Go check it out. Seriously, it's awesome. So, ciao.